Thank you for joining me for YIC Mentor Webinar Session 38. This is our agenda for this morning. I'll take care of our welcome, mindfulness, and introduction of presenters like usual. After that, I will turn over time to Audra Urie for her to introduce us to driver's education, and we'll have some conversations about what supports are available for youth in custody. And then after Audra, we will be learning from Amy Steele-Smith how we can help our students with resolving peer conflict. All right, so this morning's mindfulness moment, I thought I'd take advantage of the holiday and share a cute activity to do some self-love. This is just a quick worksheet that I had found with a Google search that reminds us to take a minute to write down some compliments to ourselves. And it suggests that we should say them out loud and maybe even in front of a mirror. I also liked this worksheet because I felt like you could use the hearts for breath work. You know, maybe use the large hearts for the breathe in, and then the purple heart for your hold, and the blue heart for your exhale. So I thought maybe this worksheet could be used in a couple ways with our kiddos and ourselves. So remember to show yourselves some love today and know that we all love you at the State Board of Education, appreciating everything you do out there to support our kiddos. All right, with that, we will go ahead and introduce our presenters. So this morning, our first presenter is Audra Urie, and she works at the Utah State Board of Education as the driver education specialist. She has participated in 7 National Highway Traffic Safety Administration state driver education, seatbelt, bicycle, and pedestrian assessments. She has been an integral part of assessing and rewriting law and policy to implement parent and guardian education requirements in Utah and Idaho. She has also designed and implemented a roadway examiner training course and mentoring standards to ensure driver education instructors are appropriately instructing students and administering road examinations. As a subject matter, she reviews research papers for the NHTSA and serves on the committee responsible for developing and publishing national driver education standards. Prior to Utah, she was the Idaho State Driver Education Director for 8 years. In Idaho, she designed and implemented driver education instructor training and program standards to meet the national standards. Audra has a master's degree in educational administration leadership from the University of Idaho, and she spent 7 years teaching high school and 3 as an administrator. And after leaving the classroom, she then spent 14 years as a police officer, specializing in traffic safety and crash reconstruction. Audra has worked with with traffic safety stakeholders and agencies for over 30 years, currently serving as the chairperson for the National Driver Education Administration Association, a highway safety commissioner, and a board member with Utah Operation Lifesaver and Teen Driving Task Force. Thank you, Audra, for all you do. I know I, as a parent, appreciated the increased responsibilities and requirements for my kiddos to get their licenses. Okay, so after Audra, like I said, we will be hearing from Amy Steele-Smith. And Amy firmly believes that 99% of the population wants to be successful. Children want others to be proud of them, and they want to do a good job. She loves to be part of teams that create opportunities to make that a little easier for them. Amy graduated with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a master's degree in social work. She is licensed in the areas of social work and special education and is currently working towards her psychological autopsy certification. Amy was part of the Utah State Board of Education prevention team, where she worked with board members, legislatures, and local education agencies on policies regarding bullying, absenteeism, human trafficking, and sexual abuse prevention efforts. She was also part of the state crisis response team and a member of the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Committee. She has worked with Native American tribal councils and enjoys working with marginalized populations. Recently, Amy left the USBE and launched Solutions Within Consulting. All right. Thank you for the time for introductions. With that, I will stop my screen share and turn time over to Audra.
Thank you, Amanda. Okay, let's see if we can make sure everybody's seeing the correct slide. Driver's licensing here. I think we're good. As Amanda introduced me, I appreciate it. As she said that I'm the driver's education coordinator specialist, kind of the director of all the driver's education in the state of Utah for the public school system. There's two different driver's education programs. I'll just kind of put that out there right up front. There's one through the school system, and then there's one through private companies in the state of Utah. So the presentation I'm going to give is actually will pertain to both, but then once a child or a student or a parent or a guardian or anyone like that gets into the two different roles, they're a little bit different. The requirements are different for getting licensing. So I'm going to do kind of an overview of what the licensing process is. Today, our learning intentions are the requirements to obtain a driver's license in Utah, how to obtain a learner permit, which might be difficult for the group of students that we're speaking about, and who can sign for things, what kind of waivers that we have, evaluations, documentation, and the liability requirements for who's going to be signing and the paperwork that's required, what the different laws and codes require for having a driver's license, our financial assistant programs, if the students have IEPs, 504s, or need specific driving evaluations from a driving evaluator to say whether they're ready to have a driver's license, the process for that, and different resources that we might have for them. I know I try to take a lot of information, put it on here, and I'm not going to read to you, but in Utah, if you're under the age of 19, you have to have driver's education, and if a minor is considered under the age of 21 for a driver's license in Utah. So when you hit different milestones, there's going to be different requirements for having a driver's license, and the ability to drive at different times, or who must be in the car with you, or if you can drive by yourself. Utah requires you to have a driver's license if you have a home in Utah. If you're in Utah, residing there for at least 6 months permanently, that doesn't necessarily mean that if you come in for college or you're temporarily staying there that you have to get a driver's license. You can just be visiting or be taking some kind of classes or be an institution type of atmosphere and still maintain your license in your home state. The one piece that Utah is a little bit different with is if you're gainfully employed in Utah, they require you to have a license. I'm actually kind of a odd person, and I find this with my driver's ed instructors. There's states obviously that surround Utah where we have driver's ed instructors that live in Idaho or live in Nevada or even live in Arizona, and just because they teach school in Utah, they require them to have a driver's license there in Utah, which is contradictory to most states because it's usually where your residence is. So this becomes quite tricky with some students or with some employees that you might have, is where your residence is and where your job is. The residence trumps, however. If you have a legal residence in a different state, that's where you keep your license. Once you come into Utah, they allow you, if you have a job there, to get a license in Utah, or if you're a student, you're welcome to get a license in Utah. However, it's not a requirement if you're just temporarily staying there. We usually start driver's education with students in the 9th or 10th grade. So when they're 15 and a half is when we start them. You can't get a license until you're 16 years old, but the process to be trained takes around 6 months to complete. And so if there is a student that is maybe visiting our state or might be a foreign exchange student or might not be staying for at least 6 months, we can train them, but they probably won't finish because it'll take that amount of time. If their student is 18 and under, they have to have a learner's permit, which means that they can drive with somebody else in the car and practice with them. And depending on the age, I'll kind of go over this. Depending on the age, they have to have either somebody over the age of 21 with them or over the age of 19 with them, depending on their training time. And so these students are going to be starting around the age of 15 and a half. They have to hold the learning permit for at least 6 months before they can even get their driver's license. So that's why we encouraged them to get it at 15 or 15 and a half to make sure when they turn 16, they can get a driver's license. Just because they're 16, it's not just a magical date of a birthday that you have to go get your license, but that's generally when teens like to get their license. If they're under the age of 18 or under, somebody has to sign for legal responsibility for that minor. And that can be a parent, a guardian, whoever has paperwork that says that they are legally responsible for that child. It cannot be a state entity, or it has to be an individual. So a foster parent could sign for them. Anybody who becomes a legal guardian, it could be a step parent, it could be a grandparent, uncle, aunt, somebody like that. But they have to show the driver's licensing office legal documented paperwork that they are actually that they're responsible for that child and for signing the legal liability waiver. That's the important piece, is who's going to be liable for them driving if they get in a crash, if they get a citation, or the vehicle that they happen to be in. When they're in driver's education, we're legally responsible for them because they're with a driver's education instructor and they're in a vehicle that belongs to the state. So they can be trained in that car, but there's pieces of training that have to do with having supervised driving time with another adult that they have to do outside of that. So at age 18 or age 15, they can legally get a learner permit. The learner permit has to be held for 6 months. You have to take driver's education if you're under the age of 19. So if a student doesn't take driver's education, they cannot get licensed in the state of Utah until they're 19 years old. When they go to purchase the permit, they can take the permit test at the high school that they're at, or they can take the permit test at the driver's licensing office. The driver's licensing office requires them to also do an eye test, which all of you guys have probably done before. They're at the counter, putting your head down in a little box and doing an eye test. And they take that written test. Like I said, they can take it at the school or they can take it at the driver's licensing office, and that allows them to have that permit. The permit that they get lasts for 18 months, and they have that 18-month period of time to take driver's education. If they don't take driver's education in that period of time and they want to maintain their permit, they have to go renew it. the permit used to only last a year, but during COVID, they realized that they needed to extend it for longer, and now it's an 18-month period of time that it's valid for. With that being a minor with that driver's permit, the only people that they can drive with in the vehicle is a driver's education teacher or someone who assigned liability for them until they're licensed. When they go to purchase their permit, it's going to be a $19 fee, and that $19 fee is not something that can be waived because it's part of the licensing process and not part of driver's education. Any piece of driver's education they take, we have fee waivers for any student or individual that wants to take driver's education and cannot afford it. We allow them to take it, and the state covers the fee for that. But the $19 permit fee would be the responsibility of the child or whoever the parent or guardian or signing person would be. When they go to take the permit test, they get 3 tries. When they take it at the school, they also have the same number of tries, but we allow them to take the test in a more comfortable atmosphere. It's with their regular teachers. They don't have to go down to the office and take it off of a computer through the Department of Motor Vehicle office. And we give the test at the school in multiple languages. We can take out, depending on their 504s or IPs, we can take out extraneous words, give them several attempts, and basically accommodate them more with having the ability to give the tests at the school versus at the driver's licensing office. The driver's licensing office will give the test in multiple languages. It can be read to them, but they're not going to take into account anything with 504s, IAPs, or any other items that they might need at the driver's licensing office. Once the student obtains that permit, like I said, once they turn 18 years old, they're considered they can be emancipated, or they can be a McKinney Vito student, and they can sign for liability on their own. So if you have a student who doesn't have a parent or a guardian, the first time that they'd be able to take driver's education would actually be 18 years old if they're going to be signing for themselves and their own liability. They can take the driver's education at 18 years old if they would like to. They can actually take it at 19 years old if they would like to. As long as they're in the school program, they can, no matter what their age is, they can take it through the school. Once they turn 19, however, they don't need a driver's license. As I'd said before, when they're under that age, previously, the only people that can be in the car with them would be a parent, a guardian, or a driver's ed teacher. Once they become 18 years old, any adult that has a driver's license over the age of 21 that has a driver's license can be in the car with them. So depending on the age of the child, there's different rules or requirements and regulations for it. And of course, all of this stuff is on the driver's licensing website or Zero Vitality's website. But if any of you ever come across a question about age or what the requirements are, who can sign for different items, or who could train them, feel free to reach out to me at any time, and I'd be happy to help, whether the child's in driver's education or not. While they're first getting their permit and their driver's license, they have specific rules where they have to complete the driver's education course, but they also have to complete, this is the piece that is important, that might not be able to get completed by a lot of students in your program is the supervised parent driving or the guardian driving. Utah requires not only driver's education under the age of 19, but 40 hours of practice driving, and 10 of that practice driving has to be at nighttime. So whoever the liability signer is supposed to be doing that practice driving with them to get to the 40 hours. In saying that, however, the driver's license just has the liability signer sign. They ask them the question, did they do practice driving of 40 hours or more? And the person signs that they attest that they did do it. That doesn't mean that some kind of paperwork or a log of the hours has to be turned into the driver's licensing office. Our state has graduated driver's licensing laws, which all states do. This means that there's a multi-stage process for obtaining a license, because we're going to train them and then we're going to slowly release them out into the public of public roadways on their age and how much they've practiced. So they are fully licensed at age 16, but they also have a high risk because they've just spent a small amount of time being trained and a few hours with somebody practicing. So we don't want them to drive during nighttime hours. The amount of passengers that they have is restricted, and of course there's no alcohol or drugs that can be in their system, and they can only so they're restricted to the amount of time that they can drive and when they can drive until they're 17 years old. These are the restrictions that they have. They for the first 6 months they can only drive in certain periods of time, and during the they can't drive from 5 a.m. to 12 to the morning time. So we don't expect them to be driving from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. They can't have any other passengers in the car unless they're blood relatives to them. I do get this question a lot of students. What if they got married at age 18, or they got married or had a stepchild, or they have a girlfriend that they had a baby with, or different pieces of that. That would actually fall under the blood relative of being able to transport that child. And if they can fill out paperwork where they can not till they're 18, they can fill out paperwork that they can actually have other people in the vehicle with them. So depending on their age, they might be restricted to not having any passengers whatsoever. There is a legislative rule going through right now, House Bill 350, that is trying to change this from having no passengers to one passenger, which would change a lot with having, we try not to let teens have any other teens in the car with them, so that they don't drive recklessly. Data clearly shows that that's the reason why we have these staged laws, is the fact that we want them to focus on their driving, not focused on other teens or focused on, the radio or phones or anything like that. So we slowly release them through the process. And then age 17, they have no longer have restrictions and they can drive on their own. As I said, there's a lot of resources that we have on the Utah Zero Fatalities website. Is pretty much the website that we use because that's our driver's education program. We have parent education through there. We have flyers and videos for anybody who might be a parent or a guardian or hosting someone, to help teach them how to drive. The process, we have videos that show how do you teach somebody how to back, how do you teach them how to parallel park, what should you start with when you're teaching someone to drive. and it works them from small baby steps from a parking lot up to driving on the freeway, which no one in Utah probably is ever ready to go drive on our freeways. It has the driver's licensing laws, the graduated licensing laws. It has forms to track driving. It has practice tests for the permits and walks them through the process of driver's education and how to get a license and those resources for the parents and guardians. And it even has flyers, pamphlets, questions, information on, is this teen ready to drive? Not every teen is ready to have a driver's license at age 16. Sometimes they're just not emotionally ready or ready to have that responsibility for driving. This is one of the flyers that I was talking about. You guys will all receive this this PowerPoint. So if you want to download it, or you can go to our Zero Fatalities website and download these. We hand out all of these flyers and information to every 8th grader and 9th grader as they transition. So when they're doing open house from 8th grade, when they're going into 8th grade and when they're going into 9th grade, we make sure that all the parents and students get all of this paperwork and information at their open houses and their registrations for changing grade levels and changing schools. We also have a presentations and information that we do in the freshman orientation classes as well as the freshman study hall classes to prepare people for how to obtain your permit, especially for students, let's just say refugee students. It might be a process where it takes over a year or more to get a birth certificate. So there's certain paperwork that you need to go get all of these items, and so we do a lot of training and orientation with the students, and we invite whoever the parent or guardian or whoever is responsible with them to train. And we have classes in the evening times on, if you go back to the Zero Fatalities website, we actually have a page that we have presentations almost every single night for a parent, guardian, or whoever wants to be in charge of the student for that driver's license on how to obtain paperwork. If you don't have social security cards, if you don't have birth certificates, or some kind of paperwork to show who you are, where to go to get that paperwork, how to apply for it, how to obtain it, how do you get that information. We have courses and classes on that you can locate on the Zero Fatalities website, or also on the freshman orientations or the skills classes that we have in 9th grade. For all of the students can sign up and take that little course on how to get paperwork. These flyers, like I said, that we have are readily available through our office or through any of the public school systems. They have them in their offices, or they can be found on the website. This is the Utah Driver Handbook. Most of you have probably seen it if you've ever had to get a driver's license or renew your driver's license, or you want to know basic traffic laws in Utah. They have them at the driver's licensing offices, or you can find them on the driver's licensing website. They can be downloaded, and right now they only come in 2 languages, English and Spanish. Previously, I talked about funding opportunities. Any student who takes driver's education from a public school system qualifies for a fee waiver. If the school knows if they're on a fee waiver, or if the student just says that they can't pay for it and they want to take the class, there's no questions asked. The school just covers it, and then we reimburse the school districts for that cost through this state program that we have. So any student that wants to be trained in a car can have that free training, but getting and obtaining the driver's license without a liability signer might be difficult at the very end. So we can train them, they just might not be able to get their license until they either have a liability signer or turn 18 years old. We also have a program with driving evaluators. As I said, we have, if the student's on a 504 or an IAP, we follow that through driver's education. Driver's education is a core class at the high schools. And so if they have IAPs or 504s, we follow that in driver's education, just like we would in English, science, math, any of the other core classes. And it also applies to the car. If they need modifications or accommodations. If a student or whoever is responsible for that student or the teacher feels like they need a driving evaluation, we as the state also provide those driving evaluations. It's a 2-hour session with an occupational therapist. We have 4 of them in the state of Utah that we'll send students to, and they test them in multiple scenarios within a setting inside of a room and also in the car. They do both of that, and it tests for their vision, their cognition, strength, range of motion, coordination, reaction time. We ask them a set of questions. There's certain machines that do tests with them, and try to make sure that we provide them the best opportunities to succeed in the classes. And also this evaluator will give a lesson plan or what type of modifications the vehicle might need or accommodations we might provide for them in the classroom for their success. And it might be anything from a spectrum disorder to needing that a student that's in a wheelchair or has appendages, any type of, if they have one arm or they just don't have any strength in one arm or something, we can modify the vehicle that way. And the state covers the cost for the evaluation and also the modifications to the vehicles. The vehicle that they're going to be driving in the future, of course, we do have programs that also help the parent or guardian or whoever's responsible for modifying those cars also. And that's what I have for my presentation. If anybody has, I'll stop sharing and see if anybody has any questions that they might.
Well, Audra, you already addressed one that came in the chat about documentation, but I just wanted to reread it in case there was a little more detail. So I have some students that don't have access to Social Security cards or birth certificates due to a variety of family circumstances. Are there other forms of documentation that are accepted?
So obviously passports. If the Social Security card is actually the easiest one to get around because the state will tell them where to go to apply for a Social Security card. But if they get denied, that deny letter is something they can give the driver's licensing office, that they require that denial letter to show that they've applied and been denied. The birth certificate or some way to show who they are, if the teen can't figure it out, the other way is that they try to which might be difficult for the teen if they don't have a parent or a guardian or someone, is that somebody who signs for them or somebody else has to have a birth certificate or be able to show who they are. So if it was my child, I could show my birth certificate and attest that that's my child, if that makes sense. So if there's somebody that can vouch for the child, and then let's just say they could use their school ID or a yearbook or something showing who they are, they'll believe that parent or guardian of what their birth date is and that type of thing. But That's only if the parent or guardian has paperwork showing who they are. So one of the two individuals has to show proof of that it's truly the, that person. So if you're the guardian, you have to have court paperwork showing that you're legally responsible for that child. You have to show them that paperwork, and then you would show them your ID or your paperwork. Because if you have a Utah driver's license, you've already shown your birth certificate and who you are. But if you don't have a Utah driver's license, you would, as a parent or someone, would have to show your birth certificate. But we do show them. We have programs where we help the child try to obtain their birth certificate from wherever it is. How to apply for it, how to pay for it, get it. We take care of all that for them.
Awesome. Love hearing about all these resources. Okay, another question in the chat. It asks, is street smarts required by Utah law?
It is not. It is a program. Street Smarts is a program that we use to help train the students. It's a 4.5 hour simulated program that students can do just as long as they have a screen and a mouse. And we use it for common language, verbiage, and also teaching the student beginning scanning and knowledge about driving without having them in the car. The reason why we use it is to get them ready with, like I said, that common language of what it means to scan, or what does it mean to look for something or look over your shoulder, or what's the process of what do you do first, like look, turn on your blinker, move, right? Like we have a process for driving, and it helps them learn that process. So that's why a lot of schools use it. Some of them use it as the part of the classroom course, and some of them use it as beginning driving before they start on a range or on a roadway. And the state pays for it. That's why a lot of school districts use it. The school has the ability to use it as an assignment, as a required assignment. So when I say that it's not required, it could be if the school chooses for it to be an assignment. They could be using it as part of their driving time. They could be using it. We provide it. They use it in a way that they want to at their LEA or their school district. But we don't require the driver's ed programs to use it. We make it available. They can use it or not. But then once the LEA has it, they can say, Johnny, you have to take this. It's part of your grade, or it's part of your course. So when I say it's not required, I mean, the school can make it required. We don't require it at the state level. It's very helpful to the student though, but we also provide, like we pay for, if the students are, the school's going to want to use it, the school should be providing, the child with the Chromebook or the lab or some place for them to take it. They shouldn't just say, oh, you need to go do this on your own. So if that's happening, that's not okay.
Okay, another one just popped in the chat. If the parent shows their birth certificate or social security card for the youth to get their permit, when the youth gets their driver's license, do they have to show their own birth certificate or social security card, or will the parent still work?
So they only have to show it once. So if they show it when they do the permit phase, then that's it. Like you only have to go to the driver's licensing literally one time. You can you have to show them all your paperwork one time. Did that answer the question? You don't have to duplicate something again. So if they've already done it, they don't have to do it again.
And I can attest to that because I've gone with both of my boys, and I was surprised the second time. I was like, "Wow, really? Like it's that easy?"
They already know who you are. You're sending. If you did everything at the school, however, then when you go to so if you did all your permit information, took your permit test in your road, you did everything at the school, school level, then you would show it when you go in to get the driver's license. But if you did everything at the permit level at the driver's license office, then you've already shown it.
Well, nothing else in the chat that I'm seeing immediately, but you're welcome to come off mute if you have some questions for Audra. We do have a little bit before our other presenter. Oh, our other presenter just popped in. I must have had ESP. Anyway, we still have time.
That's okay. I do have one other thing. We
Sure.
have really strict rules with driver's education. So we require an 80% competency for the classroom and for behind the wheel, because that's a licensing requirement that students have a competency of 80% for their permit test and for their road test and for any exams or any training that happens during driver's education. It's important to know that it's not, you can't get a C or a D or a minimal score. You have to get an 80% or above to pass for driver's education, and that's cumulative. So like the classroom, you have to have an 80% or above. Your permit test has to be an 80% or above. Your road test, any of the skills that you're performing in the car have to be performed at that competency level, or they will fail driver's education. The fee waiver does count multiple times, so if they fail the first time, they can take it as many times as they need to for free. We do try to get them to mature or practice before they come back again, and not just, keep taking it over and over again before they're ready. And we also have strict rules with their attendance and their behavior and attitude. We grade on behavior and attitude. If they don't make good choices in life or good decisions in life, they're not going to make good choices or decisions in the car. So we're very strict on, if a student, and this is all in code and rule, and it's not really something that we have a choice. We just know that, we want them to be good students or have good behavior and have good attendance. If they drop below attendance level or a competency level in their other classes, just like it would be for sports, they also get dropped from driver's education. If they get in trouble, in a fight, if they get in trouble for drugs or alcohol or other items, they get dropped from driver's education. If they get caught driving or get a citation, in a vehicle or have some kind of law enforcement interaction, that's deemed inappropriate or a behavior that's not accepted, they get dropped from driver's education. They can come back in a new course, but they automatically fail that course that they're in. So we want them to take it seriously and have a respect for driving a motor vehicle, and we hold them to that with their attitude, behavior, and attendance.
Wonderful. I know my younger one had to do it twice because of his attitude, and I'm glad that he had the opportunity to mature before he had gone back. Okay, there are more in the chat. So first one that we haven't addressed is, where are the locations for the competency evaluations?
So the road competency, or where does it say that at, or where?
I think it was the ones that the $200 like driving evaluation is what I kind of remembered from the conversation.
Oh, okay. University of Utah Health is where we send most of the students to, but we actually have a roving evaluator, like someone, she's from Layton area and she travels all over the state. We have one in Washington County, one in Logan. But anywhere there's pretty much a University of Utah Health or occupational therapist, then those are the locations. Most of the students that need something, their parents live in a location where they have services. So not always, but we'll find the services for them.
Yeah, especially with the mobile, it sounds like it's definitely a possibility. Okay, so the next question says, I may have missed this. If they're under 18, the state has responsibility of insurance, but if they're 18, how does the premium work then? Who would pay for that?
For the vehicle insurance or being a liability signer?
So I'm thinking the vehicle insurance.
So once somebody is 18 years old, they can sign for their own insurance. They're considered an adult, so they have the ability to sign for their own driver's license, and they have the ability to sign for their own car insurance. While you're in driver's education, the state doesn't require you to. That's what the liability signer is for. The student doesn't have to prove they have insurance or anything like that. It's that liability signer is saying we have a car that's insured. They're attesting to that's part of what they're signing to. So there, no proof of insurance has to be shown. They're just signing that they have insurance and they're going to take care of the liability for that. That's why an 18-year-old can sign for themselves. They would be attesting, I am responsible for myself and I'll carry insurance on my car. Most states actually require you to show insurance. Utah does not.
All right, the next question, is there an expiration time on the fees for the learner's test? Like if they fail the test once or twice in a year, can they come back a year or two later, or would they have to repay fees?
So the permit fee, the permit test that they take lasts 18 months. When they pay the $19 fee at the driver's licensing office, they get 3 free tests. So once you pay the $19, you can take the permit test 3 times if they want, or they can have a combination of tests where they can take the permit test twice and then use the last one for the road test. Or they could take the permit test once and then the road test twice. So they have those 3 free ones from the $19 fee, and then they would have to pay $19 over again to get 3 more tests.
Oh, kind of a 3 strikes you're out.
3 strikes you're out. Yeah, and the test, once you pass it, the test lasts 18 months. If they don't get their license within that 18 months, they'll have to redo the permit test again.
Okay. All right, we have another comment. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
So this one says, I have a student that passed driver's ed at his homeschool first quarter and then got a D second quarter. Our school provides driver's education online with AAA. I've told this student he needs to complete the course again. Is that correct?
So usually it depends on if he passed the online course with AAA, that should be the course for them to pass it, unless the school is doing a blended course.
Okay, so he did not pass the AAA course. That's the
okay.
course that we offer him. At his home school, he passed it. It's a 2-quarter class at traditional school. And he passed it with a B or an above for the first quarter, but then he received a D the second quarter. So I believe that they have to have a B or an above to be able to complete the course. And he's saying, well, I've already done the course. And I said, you did 1/4 of the course.
Correct. So he actually has to pass both quarters with an 80% or above. So he did fail. And I was going to say, if he took the AAA course online and failed it, then that's a fail also. So he'll have to start over again.
Okay, so I will just enroll him into our AAA course, the complete course, and then he'll be able to complete that and get his driver's license.
Correct. So
Okay.
when they do the AAA course, they're actually going to get a code from the school because we have a specific course that we use that's a Utah specific. Then they get a code from the school to retake it. Not all students thrive online. I'm just going to tell you that. If it was my choice, I would have them take it classroom every single time because they learn so much better. Only specific students, as you probably know, do well in online classes. Not even adults don't do well online with classes. So driving especially. So
we're just happy that we have that option here, though, for our students because we don't have a driver's ed course here.
Okay, and where's that at?
This is at Roosevelt, the transition unit 1.
Oh, okay.
So we do credit recovery, juniors and seniors, get them out the door, get them a career, get them a driver's license, kind of try and launch them into their life.
Okay. We do have the coursework at the youth and custody sites at the Provo location and the Ogden location. We do have both choices of the classroom course and the online course at both of those locations. If they stay there, they can drive there, but usually they get transitioned out to a high school and then they can do their driving at the high school.
Okay, so would that be a possibility for him to contact whoever he needed to do for the coursework for the second quarter?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, at a homeschool or at one of those
So
transition
talk to
locations.
Cottonwood where he came from.
Correct.
Get in touch with Matthew and see if he can just do the second quarter coursework. Okay, that's good. I didn't know that was an option.
Yes, we have the courses there. We actually have a driver's ed teacher at both of those locations that can teach driver's ed.
Okay, well, not seeing anything else in the chat. Thank you for one of the questions you addressed earlier, Audra.
You're welcome. If anybody has any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me, or if something comes up with just a specific student, I'd be happy to help.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the information. Like she said, reach out if you have questions. I will share out the contact information in the follow-up. And if there's ever conversations about fee waivers or anything like that, you can reach out to either one of us and we'd be happy to help with that conversation. Thank yous are coming in. So again, thank you so much for your time, Audra. You're welcome to stay on. It looks like Amy Steele-Smith has joined us also. So Amy, if you can hear me, I would invite you to go ahead and turn on, there she is, turn on her camera and get ready. Now, because I forget, are you sharing slides or am I? You're still on mute, friend.
I'll share them.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and take it away.
Okay, awesome. Hello, everybody. My name is Amy Steele-Smith. And I just recently left the Utah State Board of Education. I was a prevention specialist there. And then one of the areas that I worked on for a couple of years was bullying prevention. And I think is very timely given that today is Valentine's Day, that we talk a little bit about, well, we're not going to talk a whole lot about bullying. We're going to talk mostly about peer-to-peer conflict, and really why it's important to recognize peer-to-peer conflict and how we can utilize peer-to-peer conflict to reduce bullying in our educational settings. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can you guys see Taylor Swift? Is that what we can see? Okay, awesome. Which is who I my money on for the Super Bowl. And then she didn't make a surprise appearance during halftime, which was very frustrating for me. So I don't know if anybody else was voting for her or actual teams, but all right, let's see if I can get this forward. All right, so kind of the three takeaways that I would like for you guys to come away with today. And I'm going to be asking questions, and hopefully you guys will respond, and we can have some dialogue about this. But I'd like for us to look at the difference between peer-to-peer conflict, bullying, and assault, and really be able to understand what those differences are. Those are very different things. When I was with the board, I used to field hotline complaints, and it was always very surprising to me how many people would submit a complaint for bullying that was assault, that had moved beyond bullying, or something that was really just peer-to-peer conflict. So being able to understand the differences between those three things and the importance of that, why we can't afford to continue to ignore peer-to-peer conflict, and how do we give kids skills that help them resolve conflict in their lifelong settings. So that's really the the three things that I'm hoping we're able to walk away with today. So let's begin. I'd like for you to close your eyes, and I'd like for you to think back to a time in your life when you felt truly safe, when you felt accepted, when you knew that kindness was all around you. And I want for you to think about that spot or that event, that place for just a moment. Now I'd like for you to think about the kids that you work with, and I'd like for you to imagine what it would be like if we had the opportunity or ability to create that warm feeling for all of those students that you felt in that situation where you felt safe and accepted. We're going to explore today how we can make that vision a reality by preventing bullying and creating a situation and an environment where our students are able to thrive. So, who is aware of the Utah or knows what the Utah Portrait of a Graduate is? Is that something you guys are familiar with? My board friends better be. Amanda is, okay. So the Utah Portrait of a Graduate, I'm not sure if everyone understands where that came from or how that was developed, but one of the things that occurred when the Portrait of a Graduate was developed was a conversation with our community partners. So when kids leave our schools, the K-12, and sometimes it's before they leave education, they enter into a different area of the community. I like to remind people that our kids, though we spend a lot of time with them, do not grow up in the vacuum of a school. They actually are growing up in communities. So one of the things that occurred was a conversation with community partners. So those who are going to be employing our students when they leave, and those that may be taking them in a trade school setting or a college setting. So those community partners that would be interacting with our students when they weren't at school. And so that's who helped develop the Portrait of Graduate, and really talking about those things that they needed to see in our kids for them to be able to be successful. So if you will put in the chat your best guess, how many of the core competencies, there's 13 of them, do you think deal with social and emotional skills? I can't see the chat. I don't think. Oh, there we go. 11. Okay, 5, 7, 9. 9. Those are some good guesses. Okay, so I actually get a little, don't ever call this a soft skill around me. I think if we really think about social emotional learning and social emotional skills, those are actually the skills that help us be able to use our cognitive abilities, right? Those are the things. I don't believe they're the soft skills. I actually believe they are the hard skills that help drive our success. So it is, the winning number is 9. There are 9 of our 13 competencies that are directly tied to social emotional learning. And that's quite a few. So like honesty, integrity, you think about the skills a student needs when they go into the workforce. They need to be able to be resilient. They need to be able to take a job and show up on time, show up every day, do those things that will allow for them to be successful. They need to be able to learn, be lifelong learners, have respect, be able to resolve conflict. So all of those things are very important skills when we're looking at what our students need to be able to be successful when they're not in our educational setting. So what is our role? In recent years, the issue of bullying has gained quite a bit of attention, and rightfully so, even as of recently. It's gained quite a bit of attention, and it can have really devastating effects on our students' lives. I think you guys have probably seen some of those effects. I see patients on 1 day a week, and a lot of the things that they're working through we go through traumas, stem from being bullied. As an educator or a mentor, part of our responsibility is to help create an environment where students feel safe, they feel valued, and they feel like they're free from bullying. We can't, if you think about conflict, do we think that conflict is something that we can just completely avoid? Probably not, right? Conflict is one of those things that we're going to encounter. And even, I don't know, I would say even locking ourselves away and doing everything remotely, we still have interactions with people that could potentially have conflict. So it is a natural part of life. It's something that we all experience. And it's really actually not inherently harmful. In fact, when we manage it constructively, conflict can lead to like personal growth. It can help us improve a lot of skills like communication and learn how to build stronger relationships. It's when that conflict turns to bullying that it becomes quite a concern. So how do we use peer-to-peer conflict resolution as a tool to help stop bullying in our schools? First, I think what we need to do is we have to recognize that our students are not passive recipients of knowledge. They are active participants in their own education. And if we see them as that capable being that has the ability to engage in learning some of these higher level skills, then we empower them to be able to address the conflicts in a peaceful and respectful manner. Why is it moving forward? There we go. So words matter, right? Words are really important. I don't know if any of you have said this or if you've heard anybody say this before, but I have oftentimes heard people say, well, you know, kids are just mean. Kids are just, you know, they're just mean at this age. Or, you know, middle school kids, they're really tough. They're really mean. And I oftentimes push back on that because I think the majority of kids are a reflection. They're reflecting what they've been taught. They're a reflection of the interactions that they have seen that are socially appropriate. And they're a reflection of where they have been shown boundaries and taught boundaries and where they haven't. So in teaching kids that words matter, and not just verbal words, all words matter. We live in this very crazy situation right now where we can throw out a bunch of words and not see a facial expression, not see a real, not have the ability to humanize who we are putting our words out to. They need to understand the impact of words and actions on others. And one of the best ways they learn to do this is by the words that come at them, the way we express our frustrations, the way they watch us resolving our conflict, the words that we choose to use when we're interacting with another student. I think we're all pretty aware of how observant toddlers are. Especially when they throw out that first swear word. I remember my oldest son, and the first time he swore, thinking, oh no, like, where did that come from? And so I think we're pretty aware of toddlers and how observant they are. But there comes kind of this, I don't know if we have overreaching expectations of kids as they get older, that they will just take the good and not take the bad of what we're saying or what they're seeing, but they're still observing. They're still observing us. They're still watching to determine whether or not this is an appropriate behavior. Is this, oh, if I say this, is somebody going to correct me? We hear about bystanders and upstanders, and you know, bystanders are probably more readily, there's a lot more of those than maybe a bully or the subject of a bullying behavior. But if we teach students how to use their words and how to identify how they're feeling, we empower them to be upstanders. We empower them to voice their concerns and how to do it in a safe and effective way. So let's briefly go over kind of the difference between these three different items: peer-to-peer conflict, bullying, and assault. So the first one is peer-to-peer conflict. So I'd like for you, and I'm going to ask for somebody to unmute and respond, but think about when was the last kind of normal, typical peer-to-peer conflict interaction you had with somebody, and what did that look like? I'm gonna need one person to raise their hand or to unmute, or and I'm a therapist, silence doesn't scare me.
Am I okay to be your guinea pig, or do you need someone else?
Silence scares Amanda, though.
It does. It does.
Yeah. Go ahead, Amanda.
So, I think it was like we had to plan some additional dates and trainings, and we were having conflicts about how many and where and who, and it got a little, you know, like, I think communication was the problem. We were just there wasn't an actual problem. We were just having a communication problem.
Okay. So that is a perfect example of peer-to-peer conflict, right? Peer-to-peer conflict is something, there could be a disagreement, some tension, right? But really the characteristic of peer-to-peer conflict is that it typically involves people, two or more people, and they're more or less on even playing field, right? They're peers, and there's really no intention to cause harm or to intimidate. Okay, so if you think about those interactions that you see students having, now there may be an attempt to win, right? To be able to win the argument, right? That's an internalization, but that desire to be right is not the same as a desire to harm or intimidate another individual, okay? The reason why it's important to understand what peer-to-peer conflict is because this is really the time when we see this, that we have the greatest opportunity to start morphing or to start changing behavior, and to really start giving skills to our students, so that it doesn't escalate into something that's more harmful, which is bullying. Okay, so now let's look at what bullying is. 53G9601 defines bullying as a school employee or student who intentionally commits a written, verbal, or physical act against somebody else. They knowing that most, like, the reasonable person would be able to foresee that it would have the effect of causing harm, physical or emotional, causing damage to property, harm to the student's physical or emotional well-being, or the employee's physical or emotional well-being, damage, creating hostile environments, threatening, humiliating. It's pervasive, it's persistent, and there's a power differential between the subject and the perpetrator of the bullying act. And it substantially interferes with the individual having a safe school environment to be able to perform their educational duties. So I'm not sure if anyone was aware that the bullying definition includes not just students, it includes all individuals that work in the educational setting. So I'd like for you to think now back about some of your last interactions with students at school. And I'd like for somebody to describe what they felt like or what they observed to be a bullying incident or behavior. Do you guys not have any bullying happening at your schools?
Question, do you mean bullying behaviors towards us or towards their
Either.
peers?
Yeah,
Oh.
either. Yeah, because bullying can be directed towards an adult in the school.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I don't have any bullying kids, but well, Emily's kind of a bully.
I had a parent call saying that their child had been bullied online, posting some
Okay,
mean pictures of them and saying mean things about them.
okay, yeah. The online bullying has become obviously more common, right, than it was in the
I
past.
get this back.
But that situation where somebody is posting, you said pictures, Melissa?
Yes. Yeah.
If we look at what their intent was, right? What was their intent? Was it to harm or to intimidate the victim, or the subject? In Utah, we call it a subject of bullying. Was there a power imbalance, and was it repeated? One of the biggest, I'm not sure how you guys feel about the word repeated, but that's one of the biggest, I think, hurdles when bullying incidences are being investigated is I will hear an administrator, an educator, somebody say, well, it just happened one time. I think that we need to make sure that we're being careful and not assuming that the only incident that we saw is the only incident that has occurred, right? There could be incidences that we didn't see previously that would make that a repeated kind of escalating incident for that student. So Lexi, actually, we'll move on. And I'd like for us to look at assaults now, because there were so many complaints that I would get in, and my very first email back was, have you involved law enforcement? Because this is not a bullying incident. So assault is a criminal act, and assault can, sometimes we think maybe somebody needs to be bleeding for it to be assault, right? Somebody has to go to the hospital. But I like to tell people to think about it this way. If this was something that somebody did to you in a grocery store, would you consider it bullying, or would you consider it assault? Oftentimes in the educational setting, we default to bullying. Everything's bullying, everything. But if it's something that we would classify as assault in a public setting, it's assault in the educational setting as well. So actually pushing or shoving could be considered assault. It doesn't have to be something that only involves a weapon or very severe physical harm. Okay, so that's where there's trainings for administrators that are involved in the investigative process, and going through those investigations. LEAs are now supposed to have a bullying point person that can help with the investigative process and understanding the difference. But assault's a criminal act. It's intentional. It's physical contact or a credible threat. Okay, so it can also be a threat. The intent is to cause physical harm, injury, or fear. And it is a criminal offense in most jurisdictions. So I'm glad you put that one in there, Lexi. Thank you. So the key differences, just to recap between these three, is peer-to-peer conflict is primarily about disagreements and differences, often with no intent to harm, and can be resolved through communication and negotiation. Bullying involves repeated deliberate harm or intimidation with a power imbalance. And that doesn't always mean age. We're going to watch a little clip here in just a second that will kind of help you see that. Assault is a criminal act involving physical harm or threat of harm. And it's, like I said, it's really essential to understand the differences between these. One of the frameworks or practices that we utilize in Utah is restorative practices. And those of you that participated in the Safe and Civil Schools bullying training will probably remember that, once something has moved into bullying, restorative practices, some of the restorative practices aren't appropriate. They're appropriate to use in peer-to-peer conflict. So it's important to understand the difference so we're utilizing the right resources at the right time. All right, going to do it this way. Oh.
Did you click the little button to share your sound, my friend?
You
might have to reshare.
Okay. Share sound. So smart, Amanda.
Only because I've learned the lesson the hard way.
Okay.
Who is it that I aspire to be? That is the question that we should be asking ourselves all the time. Am I?
We were able to hear it that time.
You were?
Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't. So that's
how funny.
Be. That is the question that we should be asking ourselves all the time. What kind of person am I? So this is what we're gonna do. Everyone's gonna come up with 2 things that they think everybody else should know about them. All right, I'll go first. Number 1, I used to work on Wall Street for a long time. And 2, I left Wall Street to pursue my dream and teach. Boom, who's next? Yes.
Julian Albans, and I think it's cool how you're pursuing your dream.
Thank you very much, Julian. Let's hear your 2 things.
Okay. 1, I just got Battleground Mystic on my Wii, and it's totally awesome. And number 2, we got a ping pong table this summer.
Amazing. Any questions for Julian? Yes.
Is Battleground Mystic multiplayer or single player?
That's not those kind of questions. Okay,
Hi, my name's August Pullman, Augie, and I have a sister named Bia and a dog named Daisy. I love Star Wars, and I just said 3 things. Yeah, sorry.
that sounds like a bonus to me. 3 things. Thank you very much, Augie. That was perfect. Who's next?
Oh, I actually have a question for Augie. What's the deal with the braid in the back of your hair? Is it like a Padawan thing?
What's a Padawan thing?
Oh, it's from Star Wars. Padawan is a Jedi apprentice. Who's your favorite character, Augie?
Boba Fett.
What about Darth Sidious? Do you like him?
Ouch. Okay, can we talk about Star Wars at recess? Yes? All right. Who wants to read this month's precept? What about you? What's your name?
Summer.
Summer. Want to give it a shot?
When given the choice between being right or being kind, choose kind.
Okay, so if you're not crying, what did you guys think about that clip? What do you think? Where is that at? Where does that fall on our spectrum? And why? What did you see? Was it just peer-to-peer conflict? Was there a power differential? So I would say, even though those kids are in the same classroom, right? They're the same age, there's probably a power differential there between those 2 students, right? You obviously have one who has a visible disability. You have another student who is pretty articulate and pretty popular, it appears, right? So I would probably classify a situation like this as bullying. I would gather, if you did an investigation and did some research, that you would probably find that there's more that's been going on, right? So if you look at that and you look at the impact that interaction may have on that student, is probably moved into a bullying situation. And in Utah, the reason why we want to mitigate or reduce bullying incidences is, there's a lot of talk about ACEs, our adverse childhood experiences. And if you think about what kinds of things happen in childhood or in the educational setting that can be an adverse childhood experience, bullying is definitely one of those situations. And like I said, it's oftentimes something that gets brought up with those that I work with in the therapeutic setting. So the reasons why we really cannot afford to ignore peer-to-peer conflict are some of these reasons, right? Emotional well-being. Ignoring conflicts leads to an increase in stress and anxiety, discomfort. Unresolved conflicts can negatively impact emotional well-being and overall mental health. Escalation, right? Ignoring conflicts have the potential to escalate into more serious issues because we're not learning the skills during those peer-to-peer conflict times. It escalates because we don't have the ability to diffuse those. Negative learning environments. It's really hard I'm in that video with that student. I think that would be a really hard setting to try and learn in because part of learning is interacting in your educational setting, in your classroom setting. And when you feel anxious or stressed or worried that your comments are going to spark a bullying incident or you're being watched, you're less likely to engage in that environment. Interpersonal skills. When we address peer-to-peer conflict, we provide opportunities for students to learn essential interpersonal skills like communication and problem solving, empathy, compromise, those kinds of things. Social dynamics. Unresolved conflicts can disrupt social dynamics in the classroom, right? Like you saw, not only was Augie and the other boy involved in the social dynamics in that classroom, but as you looked at some of the other students, they were now starting to question, if you look at their faces, do I want to say anything? Like they were aware of what was going on. So it changes the dynamics of the learning environment for all students. Student-teacher relationship. Students are really watching the adults and in the educational environment to decide if they have the ability to keep them safe. And if they are seeing that that's not possible, then it's more difficult for them to build those trusting relationships with the adults in the educational setting. Teaching moments, prevention of bullying, like we've talked about, creating a positive classroom culture, right? Again, if it doesn't feel safe, then that positive classroom culture is more difficult for us to achieve. And then long-term impacts, like we were talking about with ACEs. So I've mentioned a couple of times I have the opportunity to see patients in a therapeutic setting. And I have found something that I find very interesting. And I call it the 1-to-6 ratio. And I would like to think about your own lives and think about, the percentage of time that you were a kid and the percentage of time that you've been an adult. And this 1-to-6 ratio that I kind of have started to see a pattern with is how many of you, if you just think about this internally, have spent, or how many people in the population spend, I don't know, 50, 60 years of their adult life resolving trauma that occurred sometime before their age 20. And so when we talk about, this last one, long-term impacts, a lot of the people I work with are resolving something that happened or things that occurred under the age of 20. And they've spent almost their entire adulthood working on resolving those things. And so really, if we are able to create environments where kids are able to communicate, where we engage with them when they're involved in those peer-to-peer conflicts, we're reducing those things that they then have to work out, right? that they end up working out for some of them the rest of their lives. These feelings of safety in our environment, our ability to work through situations safely, those are the things that help reduce trauma. And when we teach conflict resolution, when kids are engaged in peer-to-peer conflict, they really reduce the likelihood of even a future bullying incident creating as much trauma for them as if they didn't have the skill to communicate. We're even finding that kids and young children, before the age of their ability to communicate, those things that happen to them in those young ages because they're not able to communicate cause a lot of trauma for them. Because really, we reduce trauma, or trauma is caused by our inability to move through an experience and feel like we can do that safely. And that's why different experiences, or the same maybe kind of experience with different kids, creates a different kind of trauma or no trauma. So it's a really great opportunity for us to reduce the amount of therapy somebody needs when they go into their adulthood. Okay, so what's our role when it comes to this? And I'd like for you to, let's see, there we go, there's both of them. Okay, so I pulled some data, and this is hard to see, so I'll just explain it to you, but we look at what we've heard from this staff talk about the language or the things that they hear as far as interactions in the educational setting. Their number one was, let's see, harassing language. The number one for students was racial language. So, but what I think is interesting is if you look at the top 3 negative types of interactions that staff witness between staff, it mirrors, not percentage-wise, but where it's elevated for students as well. So where they're seeing staff interact inappropriately or not being able to resolve their own peer-to-peer conflicts, students are also seeing a higher preponderance of that within their own peer-to-peer interactions. So let's get into what we do about it. So we've been talking about the importance of helping students when they hit peer-to-peer conflict. But so what do we do about it? So first and foremost, we need to prioritize achieving a state of calmness. I'm sure many of you have heard about, you know, flipping your lid, and maybe had a school counselor give that lesson. I think that may be one of the mentor activities in the mentoring stuff. But yeah, the first thing we have to do, and honestly, I still teach adults this all the time, is to achieve a state of calmness. This isn't just advice that we want for our kids. Like I said, I still work with adults on this. So we as adults, as we're interacting with students, sometimes we take things personally, or we see something that gets us upset. We also need to make sure that before we interact or help a student through a peer-to-peer conflict situation, that we're also calm, right? That we're not providing or modeling behavior that we don't want our students to be engaging in. And it's going to be very difficult for a student to get to a state of calm if we're telling them to be calm and we're not calm. If we're upset and they're reading our body language that we're not calm, that doesn't make sense to them, okay? So achieving that state of calmness and regulation, it's crucial for being able to mediate conflicts. because we're not defensive, we're not offensive. We just, we're able to engage in facts and just stating things in a way that is not harmful to other people. Okay. Our students may or may not know how to do this. Frankly, some of us adults don't know how to do this. So they may need ideas. They may need visual cues. I would talk with them about, what kinds of things help you calm down. Is it listening to music? Is it being able to go to the drinking fountain and come back, right? We also, sometimes we've heard where we will have somebody give a note that a student takes, if we know that a student calms down after he's able to take a walk, a note to the office. So talk with your kids and find out what things help them calm down. Not just in the school environment. Talk to them about, what do you do when you're really mad at your brother, right? What helps you calm down? So help them identify those things and make a list of ways that they can self-calm. And then after we're calm, we move to the next step of figuring out if this is a big or little problem, okay? So is this a kitty cat kind of issue, or is this really a lion kind of problem? And there's all kinds of very complicated like flow charts out there that you're welcome to look at, but I really like just using, when I'm talking about kids with this, I'll get a piece of paper and I'll put 2 squares on it or draw a line down the middle, and I'll say, if at the top of one, then at the top of the other, right? So if I find myself in a situation with somebody that is upsetting to me, if I am calm, then I can move to figuring out if this is a big problem or a little problem. Okay, so that breaks it down really easily for kids into just 2 steps. We can do everything in 2 steps. And that's important because, as you know, with most of the students that we work with, I came from a classroom that was, it was a behavior unit. All of my kids were AU and ED classification. And so 4-step was way too much, but we could do 2 steps. We could break everything down into 2 steps. So if I'm calm, then I'm going to figure out if this is a big problem or a little problem. So as you guys know, in brain develop, our brains are not developed fully until the age actually keeps getting higher. It's about 26 or 27. It's not the same for everybody. I think my daughter's brain was developed at 16, and I have a son that's, 28, and I think we're still working on it. So it's different for everybody. But we also know that because of that, sometimes figuring out what to do with a problem is difficult. It's difficult for our students. So we need to teach the next strategy of asking for help. So if I'm calm, and then I go to my next if then, and if I decide that this is a little problem, then what are the things that I can do if it's a little problem? And you can talk through and help them come up with a list of those items. But if it's a big problem, one of the most important things that we can teach kids, and we could frankly still teach adults to do, is to ask for help. To not feel like they cannot ask for help, right? They need to be able to be provided with the reinforcement and encouragement to ask for help, right? Because again, sometimes peer-to-peer conflict ramps up into bullying because we don't have the tools, the skills that we need to solve the problem. So if it's a little problem and I can like break my candy bar in half and give him half and I take half, that's great. Do that on your own. But if this is a big problem then I'm going to ask for help. And you'll want to talk through with your kids, your students. So if I need to ask for help and it's because I'm confused, maybe I'm confused, I don't really understand what this person is saying or what they're trying to get at, then who would help? Who's a good person that could help me if I'm confused? Or if this makes me really sad and I can't get calm, who can help me if I'm feeling sad? And it's important to go through some of those different scenarios because a student may not feel comfortable talking to the same person for any situation that they need help with, right? So talk through those, discuss who they may be able to have a conversation with. What happens if that counselor that they feel like they could talk to if they're sad is sick for the day? Then what do we do, right? Who do I talk to if I need help with those kinds of things? And then we practice. We really have to practice, and we have to practice before a situation occurs, okay? These are skills. If you guys have ever heard me talk about resiliency, you know, it's the same thing with resiliency. These are skills. We're not necessarily born with all of these skills, but we can develop them. And if we practice them, we will get better at them, right? And then the final thing we want to do is if there's a conflict, then how can I resolve that conflict peacefully? And go through some of those things that they could do, right? Could they, I don't know, do rock, paper, scissors to, you know, solve a conflict? Talk about I statements, taking turns, right? But really come up with some solutions and ideas that are unique to that student, that student will be able to utilize and that are age appropriate, right? I like to remind people that, you know, what we do in elementary may not work in high school and vice versa. When you think about, I see this all the time and I kind of chuckle, and I chuckle because I was a young mom and I made all kinds of mistakes. It's any wonder my children made it. But, you know, I see oftentimes parents very concerned, or like in a preschool or a daycare setting, sharing. I got to teach them to share. I got to teach them to share. Well, turns out there's an age appropriate time at which kids will start being able to engage in sharing. So make sure that the solutions and the strategies that you're coming up with to solve the problem are specific to the child, that they feel like they can utilize, right? We don't want to put something on there or say, we're going to do this, we're going to ignore it and walk away if the kid doesn't feel like they can ignore something and walk away, right? We want to make sure that's unique to the student and that it's something that is age appropriate for them. And then the last skill that we really want to teach, and again, us as adults could probably do a better job at this as well, is apologizing. Apologizing starts internally because you have to use an empathetic lens to identify what you did that was hurtful to the other person. And that's very important because as you guys can perceive, when somebody is passively aggressively apologizing to you, students also perceive that. And that does not resolve a conflict. If we are not apologizing through an empathetic lens, then we are antagonizing. We need to make sure that we do this the right way. But this is also another area that kids need to be taught the skill. We need to be modeling apologizing, and not just with other adults in the educational setting. I apologize to students all the time. I apologize to my children all the time, because turns out I suck at some things. I try to do better, and sometimes I still suck at them. But them hearing me apologize, or them seeing how I'm able to do that as an adult, kind of takes the weight of me being a bad person because I'm apologizing, right? It's just something we do. We learn how to recognize our behavior, and we apologize, and we take ownership when we do something wrong. A really great way to teach this to students is with to start with sentence stems. Things like, I am sorry because I am sorry that I did something, right? What I did was hurtful because, and let them practice filling in the blanks with some sentence stems. I would like to try to make it better, and I think I could do that by doing something. Okay, apologizing can really go a long way in helping to repair and restore connections and relationships. All right. So I want to make sure that there aren't any questions. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts, or you're like, yeah, sorry, no, that's never going to work? Okay, awesome. Well, I'm going to leave you with this quote. This is one of my favorite quotes. I posted it on Instagram not very long ago. I think that Trisha uses this in the Safe and Civil Schools training. I actually first heard this quote when I was going through business school. And it's, the culture of any organization is shaped by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. And I think if you let that sit with you for a moment, it's kind of a profound idea or thought, that sometimes our culture, most of the time our culture in our settings is not necessarily developed because of what we do, but because of what we don't do. And as you think about your interactions with students, if there's things going on that we don't like to see, or we don't think is appropriate, or we think is harmful, think about the hallway. How many times do we allow that type of action or interaction to occur, and we just, pretend as though we don't see it? Or we don't ourselves really know how to address it. So if we don't like what we're seeing in our schools, then we need to change what behaviors we're allowing to persist. We need to change what we're tolerating, because what we're tolerating is teaching our children where those boundaries are. And if we don't do anything about conflict until there's a bullying situation or an assault, then we're teaching our students that it's okay not to learn how to disagree appropriately. It's okay to be unkind, because it's not until those more extreme situations that we decide to do something about it. So that's everything. I appreciate you guys taking the opportunity to listen to me about this. I feel very strongly about bullying, not just in our educational setting with students, but I feel very strongly that we as leaders, and those that are leading our children, and I think any of us who work with children are leaders, how important it is for us to be checking ourselves and making sure that we're modeling really what we would like to see our children displaying. So there's my contact information. If you have any questions or would like I have some if-then sheets, things like that, just let me know.
Well, thank you, Amy.
Thanks,
Wow.
Amy.
You're welcome.
It looks like we do have a few minutes if we have some questions or conversation. Otherwise, we can wrap it up early and give everybody 10 minutes back in their day. But Amy, don't leave me just yet on that note. So thank you all for joining. I appreciate everyone's time. It was a wonderful audience and a big group for Valentine's. So I definitely felt the love. I can say that. Okay, friends. Well, I think that was it for the day. So go out and enjoy. And I hope that in your neighborhood, you're getting some sunshine or whatever the case, you're staying warm and having a fantastic day. I appreciate you all and happy Valentine's Day.
Amanda,
Yes.
this is LaRue Wade. Can I ask you a question about our last